It's time to break free from having a surface-level marriage and create deep, lasting connection. This is your invitation to get equipped with your personalized roadmap to take your pillars of intimacy to the next level. Join Intimacy Mastery today at intimacymastery.com and use promo code PODCAST for a special offer.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
From Estero, Florida, this is a One Extraordinary Marriage show where being busy is overdone, romancing is fun, and scheduling sex has taken the guesswork out of wondering when you're going to get some. Creators of the 6 Pillars of Intimacy, I'm Tony DeLorenzo, your co-host, along with my beautiful wife, Elisa. From coast to coast and around the world, thank you for joining us. It's time to talk sex, love, and commitment. Give us a call or text us on the Hug Hotline at 858-876-5663 or send us an email to hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. In today's episode, we're talking about what the last 16 years of the One Extraordinary Marriage show have meant to you, the One family. As we celebrate the birthday of the podcast, we're reflecting on how these conversations have helped tens of thousands of couples around the world.
And there's a quote from Jeanne Phillips that says, "Sometimes the most important conversations are the most difficult to engage in." And I really think about the last 16 years of this podcast, and there have been a lot of difficult conversations between Tony and I, conversations that we know that you all have had in your own homes. And I just think it's such a good reminder that important conversations can be difficult. Mm-hmm. And, as we're celebrating this 16th birthday, here's a hug from an Intimacy Mastery member that says, "We've been listening for a long time. Thank you for being open and real and for your honesty. One Extraordinary Marriage has helped us grow so much closer, helping with our intimacy and our communication. We've enjoyed the conferences we've attended, and we look forward to the cruise this year."
I love it. I love it. Hey, and I just want to share, if you're not a part of Intimacy Mastery, come join us. We have amazing resources in there for you to dive into your 6 pillars of intimacy. We have our Intimacy Mastery assessment, right? We have our micro content marriage guides. We have a live monthly workshop that we put on. Come join it. Check it out, intimacymastery.com.
So if you haven't picked up on just the little crumbs that have already started in this episode today, as this episode is being first released, it is the 16th birthday of the podcast.
As of today, when it drops.
Like if you are listening to this on the Tuesday, January 13th, 2026, the podcast is officially 16 years old.
So that means our first one dropped on January 13th, 2010.
And I'm going to straight up tell you, a lot of you know the origin story, the first episode of the podcast, which is entitled 60 Days of Sex. And if you had told me back in January of 2010, sitting in our garage in Poway, California with, puffer coats on because it was cold in San Diego in, January, that we would still be behind the microphones in 2026, I would have looked at you like you had 3 heads.
Well, we've shared this a number of times. And when we first began, it was my idea. It was this harebrained idea. Many of you, especially when we go to conferences or we speak, we ask, like, hey, how many of you knew what a podcast was in 2010? And I've been to even podcasting conferences where all we're talking about is podcasting. And I remember being in a room of about 100 people one time, and I asked that. 2 people raised their hand. And so for us to get behind the mics in 2010, right now, many of you are like, it's a podcast, who cares? Pandemic changed that. Like before the pandemic, there was a lot of listeners. After the pandemic and during the pandemic, it exploded in what it has become. But in 2010, there were no apps on your phone to listen. We didn't even know how people were listening. And so when we say, or when Elisa says she didn't know that we would be this far along, it's true because we had no idea what we were even doing back then, other than getting in our garage, no acoustics, no nothing. That's why when we say listening to those early episodes, God bless you. Thank you for listening, especially now. But we have them there to show you the transformation that can happen. Mm-hmm. But it has been a journey over these 16 years, and it hasn't only been mine and Elisa's, but it's been yours.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting because I think back, as a coach, I can make virtually anything a marriage metaphor. And, even preparing for the show and reflecting on 16 years, what we were getting into then, when Tony's like, hey, I think we should do this. Like, it was the proposal, right? Like, let's do this podcast. And I, eventually say yes. And we start recording.
Married. Like that first episode
is like the wedding.
Is the wedding.
Right. And you think about it and you, just like when you get married and you have no idea what you're getting yourself into, right? You think you do. You think you do. Oh yeah. I was like, we're good. But you have no idea what the future is going to hold. And I think about that in terms of all of you. I mean, over the last 16 years, some of the highlights have been, vow renewals and weddings of children whose parents listened to the One Extraordinary Marriage show and raised their kids with a strong marriage. We have met 7-day sex challenge babies in real life. We have met so many of you at conferences, and we've traveled with you on marriage getaways. Like, there have been so many incredible moments over the last 16 years. But when Tony and I said I do, January of 2010, I couldn't have told you that this is what our life was going to look like, and that we were going to have all of these incredible encounters with you guys and just get to know your stories. Mm-hmm. I think that's been, over these 16 years, as we've had conversations with you in person, over Zoom, at conferences, wherever it might be, so many of you have talked to us about the conversations that you've had in your own homes, right? About the fact that before finding One Extraordinary Marriage, maybe you avoided talking about sex or intimacy. You struggled to be transparent or honest. You didn't have this vocabulary. I think that's a phrase that comes up so often. Like, we didn't know how to describe what was going on in our marriage. We couldn't, talk about the needs that were unmet or expectations and things like that. And again, it's this woven thing, this woven theme of language and what are the conversations. And I can't tell you how many times people have told us, well, we talked about a podcast, right? Because you guys talked about it. We could take what you talked about, or we listened to the podcast, and then we were able to have this conversation. And it's those conversations that have created a shift in our marriage. And I think that's what, for me gets, a lot of people have asked us over the years, like, 16 years of podcasting, and they're like, don't you get bored? Like, how do you come up with topics? I'm like, well, Tony and I are still married. So stuff's still happening in our marriage, and people are still getting married and engaging in marriages. So there's no shortage of topics, because the conversations in marriage aren't just a one and done.
They ebb and flow.
You change. Your spouse changes. Your circumstances change. Life throws you curveballs. And, I think...
Can I share one thing, though, too, what I hear from couples when we are at conferences or we're speaking, or even at our church? Like, people find out what we do at church and start to listen in. And I think one of the things that has always hit me is somebody who goes, we're not the only ones. I heard a hug. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing. Like, I heard that hug, and it gave me hope, because we're not alone. Mm-hmm. And for me, that means a ton, because I know the devil wants to separate us, right? Like, the devil wants to put us in our own little box where we are alone. We're lonely. We don't have community. And I do believe over the years, we have created the one family. You guys have created and are the one family that can go into people's homes because of your hug, because of your willingness to reach out and get them out of we're the only ones. Mm-hmm. We're the only ones who've ever lost a child. We're the only ones who haven't had sex in 2 months, 3 years, whatever it may be. We're the only ones who argue. We're the only ones that have children that have gone wayward, and it's crushing us. We're the only ones that have been dealing with addiction. We're the only ones, and yet we've heard it time and time again. You're not. And you come and you listen, And you get a sense of like, we're not the only one. And we can make it through this. Mm-hmm. It's going to take some effort. It's going to be a little, if we go back to last week, we're going to have to be intentional. We're going to have to take some action. And yet we can create that extraordinary marriage we desire.
Well, I think that's what's been so interesting, because even in preparing for this particular episode, I had put a post up in Instagram and in Intimacy Mastery and just said, share with us how the podcast has helped you. Like, we don't want to make assumptions. Tony and I learned very early on with One Extraordinary Marriage that our assumptions can be wrong. And, it's way more valuable if we just ask the one family.
Yeah, because we live in our own little marriage bubble, in our own little world. And we did do that. And over the years, you learn, you grow, you expand. You're like, oh, man, I met this person who's in Middle America. And you got to understand, the majority of the One Extraordinary Marriage show, we were in Southern California. Mm-hmm. And we loved every bit of it. But we were in Southern California. And Southern California is different than other parts of our country.
100%.
And so you hear from somebody who's in Middle America or in the Northeast or down here in Florida or up in the Northwest. It's between weather and political stuff that's going on, or just the environment of who you're around, the people. It's different. And so we did have a lot of assumptions early on of like, well, this is what it is. And people be like, that ain't true. And we had to check ourselves and be like, oh yeah, you know what? You're right. Like, we got to get out of our own little bubble to see a bigger picture of what's going on, not only in our own lives, but marriages around the country, across our beautiful country, and even around the world.
Well, and that's why we've spent so much time over these last 16 years, especially as Instagram specifically has grown, asking you guys questions, right? That's the easiest place for us to aggregate that information. And so, I asked the question, like, how has the podcast helped you? And, we got responses like, helped us break out of roommate cycle, addressed the apathy in our marriage. I still remember that episode. That was a really big one.
That was a big one. Yeah.
Apathy. That's a big episode. Taught us how to prioritize responsibilities, helped us to have conversations that we'd been avoiding around sex and finances, encouraged us to try things together like a 7-day sex challenge, to understand the importance of the 6 pillars of intimacy, to have language to see where the cracks are so that we could repair them. And it's not lost on us, because a lot of people, when they hear that we've been podcasting for 16 years and the next question, or invariably the question, if they don't know the podcast, will come up, well, that's a lot of interviews. And Tony and I have shared countless times, oh, you don't understand the format of our show. Mm-hmm. For 16 years, Tony and I have got behind these microphones and said, we're going to have a conversation and we're going to just allow people to eavesdrop on what we're doing. And we didn't know. And again, this goes back to, you don't know what you don't know when you start something, and you don't know the impact it's going to have. We didn't know sitting in our garage on January, it was released on January 13th. So
I do want to say this, though. We must have done 3, 4, 5 different takes before we finally got that first episode.
I actually have to find this. We have, I had written a script, you guys, for the first, for the intro, because we didn't even know what we were going to say or how to,
It wasn't only a script for the intro. It was
I think I have the entire episode.
It was the entire episode. We were going to read this thing. We didn't understand. So sitting in our garage, and we're like, what do we say? We're just sitting down. Again, acoustically, who knew what the heck? It's horrible compared to what we have now and what we've learned over the years. And even sometimes we've still screwed up, because I'm not some, audio tech. But it took us a number of tries to get that first episode out there. And what I want to share with you is that there may be times in your marriage where you may have to have multiple conversations. Mm-hmm. You may need to address that financial intimacy pillar multiple times before you get into a flow, into a place where you're like, we got this. And do know, just like you guys, we're still there ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, it's all about the conversations, because I'll tell you, that's the most consistent thing Tony and I have done since January of 2010. And we want to talk about what this can look like in your own marriage. We're going to do that after this break. Does this sound familiar? You indulge a bit during the holidays, and once the calendar flips, January becomes all about eating better, resetting routines, and getting focused on health and nutrition. Well, you're not alone. That post-holiday slump often comes with decision fatigue, mixed messages, and the pressure to do everything perfectly on day one. Knowing where to start can feel overwhelming. That changed for me with Hungry Root. What I love most is how easy it is to personalize. 2 servings? Done. Feeding more people? Also done. Swapping proteins, checking recipes, and seeing every step ahead of time removes the guesswork. This isn't just a box of random ingredients. It's thoughtful meal planning and grocery shopping already handled. Everything shows up at my door, and all I have to do is cook. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/marriage and use code marriage. That's hungryroot.com/marriage, code marriage, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. After the holidays, I often feel blah. You know that post-holiday fog that makes motivation feel so distant? Well, it's time for a reset, but not something complicated. This is why I love Prolon's 5-day mimicking diet. It offers a structured, science-backed way to reset your body, habits, and energy. Developed with USC's Longevity Institute and backed by decades of research, Prolon supports fat-focused weight loss, metabolic health, energy, and skin appearance. Key when you're trying to feel better again. The best part for me is that everything is prepackaged and ready to go. No planning, no guesswork. I can simply start and get results. Just in time for the new year, Prolon is offering OEM listeners 15% off their 5-day nutrition program for your post-holiday glow-up when you go to prolonlife.com/OEM. That's PROLON life.com/OEM for 15% off. prolonlife.com/OEM. So we're back, and we've been talking about these ongoing conversations, the ones that don't stop, the ones that aren't the one and done, whether it's, Tony and I behind the microphones talking about the 6 pillars of intimacy again, or the 2 of you in your own home talking about your finances or finding the time to date one another or be sexually intimate. My encouragement, my ask, my plead is that you consider the fact that if you can keep the conversation going, the 2 of you can ultimately create your own extraordinary marriage. Because like I said, this is the one consistent thing that Tony and I have done more than the intimacy lifestyle, more than, getting out for dates or traveling together. This conversation with all of you at least once a week since January of 2010 is our consistency. And, as you step into this, what does it look like for you to identify those conversations that you need to be having and having regularly? Right? What's that conversation that maybe you've been avoiding or you just haven't had it in a while, and it needs to come back up to the surface, not because you've got to get a hard and fast solution, but because it needs to get worked into the rhythm of your marriage. What is that conversation? What is the one pillar? And Tony talked.
Can I say one thing about
You totally can.
About the conversation? So, interestingly enough, one of our young adults, when we were leading a small group of young adults back in San Diego, I still stay in touch with some of them. Mm-hmm. And God bless them. It's been amazing. I think at one point in time we had about 30 young adults. Mm-hmm. And over the years, they've gone married, have children. It's amazing. And so one of them, young man, reached out to me, got married recently, and is having a little conflict with his wife. And we were just chatting. And one of the things I told him, I'm like, have you had this conversation with her? He's like, well, no, not really. And so this was 2 weeks ago we had this conversation. I texted him recently. I said, hey, man, did you guys get that? And he was like, well, this is going on, that's going on. We really haven't. And my text back to him was like, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care what's going on. You need to get that conversation on your calendars. Get it on your calendars and start talking about it. The reason the One Extraordinary Marriage Show is celebrating its 16th birthday is because many, many years ago, Elise and I were like, we need to get this on our calendar. Mm-hmm. Honestly, in the early days, it was here, there, wherever. We would literally be recording at midnight. And then if something got screwed up, which it did, and things would happen, it wasn't uncommon for us to be up at 1 a.m. on a Monday morning because we used to do it on Sunday nights after the kids went to bed. Mm-hmm. But there was this time when it was just sort of haphazard, and we're like, oh, are we going to do it here? Are we going to do it there? Like, maybe we'll get it in. And we did, but it felt rushed. It felt like
it's a lot of stress.
It was a lot of stress. And then when we just said, this is our podcasting day, this is when we're going to do it, things began to ease up for myself, and I think for you as well. And so I would say when Elisa says name the conversation you've been avoiding, not only name it, but plan it. And get it on that calendar so it doesn't become like what Elisa and I did for so many years. It's like, oh, it's going to happen. And we get into these conversations here on the show, and I felt like we weren't really there. And truthfully, we weren't doing our best work, and we weren't doing the best for ourselves. It was midnight, for goodness sakes.
And if you've ever coached with me, you know I have a really strong opinion about significant conversations after like 9 p.m.
Yeah. So one of the things I would suggest, get that conversation on your calendar. And if you can do it weekly, then do it weekly.
And with that, like we said last week, what's the pillar that you're focused on? The same level of intentionality that you bring to having this type of conversation, to having those important conversations that are sometimes the difficult conversations, like where are you focused? And the reason I say that is because, as you were talking about being kind of all willy-nilly, Tony, with our schedule, it also made me remember, the first time that we shared about doing a sex challenge with, one of our small groups. There was this big conversation about spontaneous versus scheduled sex, right? And I remember this gentleman saying, well, it's got to be spontaneous. Yes. And his wife looks at him with like the stink eye and is like, well, how's that working out for you? And I think there's a lot of truth to that with these conversations too. It's not just in the scheduling, but what are we going to talk about? Right? Because if we're just waiting for the spontaneous, perfect moment to have a conversation about sex or to have a conversation about finances or about spending time together, like if people don't know what you want to talk to them about, then it's so easy to just be all over the place, to get defensive and things like that. But it's like, hey, I just want to talk about like what pillar we're going to focus on and how we're going to execute on that. Right. And again, bringing this together, it's also saying like, how do we do this as a team? So many of you, I remember years and years ago, we started talking about the two of you being on the same team. And that's what brings us all together, right? It's why when we talk to you guys about this, it's identifying what the problem is. And actually somebody commented on, for this episode about this, that one of the things that they got out of, that they've picked up and learned from the podcast and how it's helped them was that it reminds them on a regular basis that the problem is the problem. Their spouse is not the problem. Their spouse is their teammate facing the problem together. And so I think when you really get into this place of like, what are the conversations that we need to have? What pillar, where is our intentional action going? And how do we do this as a team? That's the secret sauce for the one family. That's what makes this so special.
Yeah. And one of the things that Elisa said and brought up was, what's our strongest pillar? And I just want to point you to a resource, a free resource. Go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/quiz. And that's going to take you to our 6 pillars of intimacy free quiz. And by taking that quiz, you're going to find out what is your strongest pillar. And sometimes you can just be like, oh yeah, this is what it is. Now, this is a self-assessment you're going to have to put in, and it's going to spit out what you put in. And yet it can be very helpful for each of you to do this, because by each of you doing it, you can compare. Like, oh, well, my strongest pillar is this one. Oh, that's interesting. I would have put it somewhere else. While you look at your spouse and your spouse goes, well, my strongest pillar is this one. And you could be like, oh yeah, I totally knew that. Or, oh, that's interesting as well. It starts there. It helps you and it guides you. And then when you take the book and read the book and put that into action, you can have a way to focus on a pillar each and every week.
And it's one of those things.
I'll put that here in the episode notes for you too.
You're so awesome. This is why I married the tech guy. Didn't know I was marrying the tech guy, but again, you don't know what you're getting into. We're committed to being behind these microphones, to having the hard conversations. The reality is we can't have your conversations for you. Only you can have the conversations that you need to have. Only you can address the pillars of intimacy that need to be addressed in your marriage. Only you can put things on the calendar that are going to move the needle in your marriage. We can give you all the tools, and we will. We love it. We love being a part of your lives. It has been the greatest honor of the last 16 years of being able to hear from you. I mean, we were just having dinner with new friends last night and talking about it, and they're just asking the journey and curious, and we get to share your stories. Because the 16 years of the podcast, this birthday, it does kind of feel like we're proud parents, right? Like, 16 years, like, look at our baby getting all grown up. But it's not our story of the last 16 years. Ultimately, it's your story.
And it's you guys who we talk about more than anything. When people ask, it's our story and we get to share it, but it's you who have made it.
It's your miracles.
It truly is.
Like, people ask me all the time, about the one family, and I'll say, you know what? I can't help but believe in miracles, because through the podcast, through coaching, through 6 pillars of intimacy, I have been front row seat. We have been front row seat to so many marriage miracles, journeys that have taken, 180s and all of this type of stuff. And we made a commitment a long time ago that we would show up once a week and we would keep doing what needed to be done. And our only ask is that you do the same for your marriage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys, thank you. There's no other word to say, but thank you for being a part of this journey, for this birthday, for this celebration, because it's you who we come to encourage and bring hope each and every week. It's the one family. The mission here at One Extraordinary Marriage has been and will continue to be impact one marriage every day. And because of that, we would encourage you to reach out to somebody today and encourage them, bring hope for them in maybe a dark moment in their life and in their marriage where they need that hope. They need some joy. They need the light of Christ in their life. And that is something you can do today. And maybe just by sharing this episode with them, they can just hear and get a glimpse of what it's been like for 16 years of getting behind the microphones and sharing the journey of marriage. And then they can go back and begin to listen and see that they can do the same thing for their marriage. And so we're all on this journey. We're not stopping anytime soon. In a few episodes, we're going to hit another milestone, and we're excited for that one. But do know that you have a couple here in Southwest Florida who is praying for you, who is so excited for what's ahead when you take action by what we said here today. Make the conversation vital to your marriage. Each and every week, you guys can do it. Piggyback off of every episode we have and see the change, see the transformation. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time, but I will tell you, I'm not the same man. I'm not the same husband I am today that I was 16 years ago when we first got behind these microphones. And I attribute it to us being willing to talk and strengthen our emotional intimacy pillar. You guys have yourselves a fantastic week. Can't wait to hang out with you next week. Love you guys.